Imagine that before falling asleep tonight, you say only 7 words. It's not a long prayer, nor an ancestral mantra, nor some esoteric formula forgotten by time. It's just a simple, direct sentence, but when spoken with presence and intention, it can alter the course of your unconscious mind, and with it, the silent destiny of your days. Carl Jung said that a mind that sleeps in peace is able to build a reality more aligned with the essence of the soul. But unfortunately, many people go to bed at war with themselves, carrying old guilt, unresolved worries, unspoken words, ancient fears that echo more deeply in the silence of darkness. Jung discovered that the unconscious does not sleep. It remains active, working throughout the night. And if the last message of the day is negative, that is what it will dream with, shape, and manifest into reality. But there is a way to break this cycle. A simple verbal code of 7 words. The words themselves are not magical. The power lies in the gesture, the symbolism, the intention, what you hand over to your unconscious as the last impression before sleep. Jung called it a threshold impression, that which crosses the border between consciousness and sleep and infiltrates the psychic structure like a seed. This is why so many people wake up tired even after sleeping for hours, or dream of losses, betrayal, inexplicable fears and anguish. It's because, unknowingly, they fed their mind with resentment and insecurity in the last minutes before sleep. But when you say these 7 words with presence, your unconscious hears and responds, not because they're magical, but because there is a symbolic connection, a gesture of offering. This video is an invitation to explore what lies behind those 7 words. Together, we will understand what Jung saw as the transition point between ego and self, between who you believe you are and who you really are. And at the end, you will know the phrase that can transform the way your soul rests and how it awakens. But before we continue, take a deep breath. This isn't just informational content. It is an invitation, a homecoming, a small initiation, so you can remember that you have more power than you imagine, even in the moments before sleep. The moment of closing your eyes may seem ordinary, but to the unconscious, it is a true ritual, a farewell to the external world, a disconnection from wakefulness, a plunge into the most symbolic realm of human experience, sleep. Jung said, it is in this instant that the unconscious begins to work with the material you left on the surface of the soul. It does not create from nothing. It molds what you deliver. If you fall asleep with anger, it builds defenses. If you fall asleep with fear, it activates escape mechanisms. If you sleep carrying guilt, it reinforces the internal judgment existing within you. But if you surrender to sleep with acceptance, gratitude, and offering, then it begins to reorganize, to heal, to reveal. Jung saw sleep as a sacred temple, a channel of inner communication, a space where the self shows up by means of symbols, images, and dreams, and where you can also speak to it, not with complex words, but with something more powerful, intention. That is why those 7 words work, not because they change the world out there, but because they transformed the universe within you. The unconscious needs vivid images, symbols charged with emotion, small gestures with deep meaning. When you speak with presence, it listens. When you close your eyes with humility and speak with your soul, even without understanding to whom you're talking, that gesture becomes prayer, bridge, and healing. It doesn't matter if you believe in God, in energy, in quantum physics, or only in yourself. What really matters is what you offer your unconscious in the last second of the day, because it works like the earth. It doesn't judge what is planted. It simply makes what you sow grow. If you plant worry, it harvests nightmares. If you plant faith, it builds responses. And when you understand this, you start treating your sleep as you would tend a garden. These 7 words you will learn are symbolic seeds. They don't solve all your problems, but they awaken something within you. And it is this awakening that initiates the deepest changes, because there is a type of peace that cannot be won through struggle, but is achieved through acceptance. Maybe you are one simple sentence away from that. Maybe you still wonder how such simple 7 words can generate real effect. The answer is that the power is not in the quantity of words nor their structure. It lies in how your unconscious interprets the gesture.
Jung said that the soul does not change through imposition, but through approach, through listening, through symbols that touch, not by commands that force. The most beautiful phrases in the world have no effect if uttered mechanically, without soul. But 7 words spoken in truth have the ability to cross barriers that seemed impossible. The rational mind resists change. It is programmed to repeat what it knows even if it no longer serves. But when night arrives, when the waking mind relaxes for a moment, a crack opens, and it is in that gap between the external world and the internal world that you can plant something new. That is why so many traditions speak about the value of words before sleep, not as superstition, but as code, a symbolic bridge. The 7 words you will soon know are not magical, but they represent a powerful emotional and mental reprogramming. By uttering them, I accept, I choose rest in peace, I allow what is best to find me. And when this message is repeated for 3 nights, not as obligation but as surrender, something begins to move, not necessarily outside, but inside. And that is where everything begins. You begin to perceive that dreams change, that sleep deepens, that negative thoughts lose strength. You treat yourself with more kindness, and the world naturally begins to reflect that. Jung believed that when the unconscious recognizes a new pattern being repeated with intention, it responds, not with promises, but with signs, synchronicities, encounters, new paths. It is as if the universe, hearing what your soul is saying, whispers, "I heard you, now follow." And you follow, lighter, more whole, closer to yourself. These 7 words are only the beginning. This is not a duty nor a spell. It is an intimate gesture, a moment of listening, a silent reverence to yourself. Imagine that as you lie down, you turn off the lights, the world goes silent, and you choose not only to sleep, but to truly surrender. You breathe deeply, feel your body resting on the bed, and with a calm heart you speak the phrase, the 7 words, and then you simply rest, without expecting miracles, without forcing optimism, without demanding immediate results. You just let your unconscious receive it as a seed, because that is how it understands, not by logic, but by sensation, by emotion, by symbolic image. Ibn Jung's companion saw sleep as a portal. The ego falls asleep, and the soul finally emerges, and everything delivered in that instant remains, germinates, roots. Many often forget that sleeping is not just a pause, it is a process, a subtle journey. And when you end the day with words that welcome, rather than judge or condemn, something within you begins to change. You no longer attempt to control life with rational mind, you hand over the command to something wiser, deeper, more ancient within you. Jung called it the reunion with the self, the center of the psyche, the part that knows even when consciousness forgets. And when you begin to sleep in peace, the self draws near, dreams become messages, thoughts become lighter, and the soul finally breathes again. Yes, they are just 7 words, but spoken at the right moment, with presence and genuine surrender, they become much more than a simple sentence. They become a choice, a silent pact with yourself, and that alone is the beginning of real transformation. The time has come. You understand that these words do not carry magical power by themselves. The true power lies in the moment they are spoken, in how they are felt, in the symbolic gesture that accompanies them.
Jung said the deep healing does not arise from grand theories, but from small encounters with truth. And sometimes a single phrase is capable of breaking entire cycles of self-sabotage. So breathe deeply. Imagine you were lying down, The room has darkened, the outside world has grown silent, and between your body and the silence, you whisper, "I accept, I trust, I surrender, I thank. Good night." 7 words. I accept, because resisting what simply is only drains your strength. Accepting does not mean resigning. It means looking at what is present and saying, "I see and embrace." The unconscious needs that permission to open itself to the new. Trust, because the mind lives in fear, trying to predict what it cannot control. But the soul knows trust. To trust is to let go of armor and say, even without understanding, I persist. Trust untangles the rigidity of control. Surrender, because transformation does not happen under scrutiny. To surrender is to release what hurts, even without knowing yet what comes next. It is the bravest act you can make at night. I thank, because wherever gratitude exists, the unconscious flourishes. Gratitude transforms absence into presence, pain into acceptance, lack into learning. It's a balm that touches and soothes everything that was broken. Good night, because even this farewell, when spoken with awareness, becomes sacred. You are not merely going to sleep, you are gathering yourself within. You are saying, today I am at peace. Today is enough. 7 words, 3 breaths, 1 surrender. You may write them down and leave them by your bedside. You may speak them softly or simply think them, feeling each syllable with your heart. What matters is not the form, but the moment, the intention, the gesture. In the end, this phrase was not created to change the world. It was made to remind you who you are before the world outside makes you forget. And when you fall asleep in peace with an embraced unconscious, something in the universe listens. Jung said, the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. And so if something changes within you, sooner or later, everything around you begins to reorganize. On the first night, you may only feel a slight relief, a less restless sleep, a deeper sigh. On the second, thoughts no longer rush in so forcefully. The body relaxes more easily. The heart that once raced for no reason slows with the breath. On the third, you notice something almost invisible being heard, not by someone outside, but by yourself. Jung said that much human suffering arises from inner abandonment, from the chasm between what the soul asks and what the mind refuses to hear. But when you repeat these 7 words, even in a low voice, even without certainty, you reattach the thread, rebuild the bridge, find yourself again. And that reunion changes everything. You begin to perceive that anger weakens effortlessly, resentment dissolves more easily, and the problem that seemed enormous yesterday now feels like just another step. Not because it disappeared, but because your viewpoint shifted, your vibration changed. It's as if the universe says in response, now that you hear yourself, I can show you. And it shows, not with fireworks, but with subtlety. Signs almost invisible, a dream carrying an answer, a meeting that seems coincidence but is not, an email unexpected, a thought that once knocked you down now drifts by weightlessly. It's not chance, it's synchronicity. Jung believed that when you align your unconscious with new intention, the world does not transform by magic, but you begin to see what you once could not. You become lighter, more lucid, calmer, and what once imprisoned you loses its grip, because your soul began to speak again, because your unconscious was embraced, because sleep ceased to be escape and became return. 7 words, 3 nights, a new beginning. Do not expect fireworks or immediate miracles. Just observe. See how your energy shifts, how people begin to respond differently, how everything that seemed out of place gradually reorganizes, not because the world changed, but because you changed. In the silence, where everything truly begins, for Carl Jung, sleep was more than rest. It was passage. While the world sleeps, the unconscious awakens. It is in that space, without masks, control, or distractions, that true transformations take shape. Jung said, in the silence of the night, the soul reveals what the entire day tried to hide. Images, symbols, desires, memories, all that was ignored returns in the form of dream, sensation, or intuition. That is why this moment is so powerful, because when you bid farewell to the world with a gesture of peace, with 7 words spoken intentionally, you are telling the unconscious, I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to return to myself. This gesture marks the beginning of individuation, Jung's central concept. To individuate is not to isolate oneself, nor to become extraordinary. It is, in fact, to return to wholeness, to gather all parts that were forgotten, denied, or broken. And it begins like this, with small gestures, with the decision not to fall asleep at war with oneself, not to let the last words of the night be those of fear, demand, or guilt, but of acceptance, trust, surrender, and gratitude. Even at first, it all seems just a ritual. Over time, you'll realize that this gesture is more real than many words said during the day because it arises with presence, without audience, without performance, and the unconscious recognizes truth. It is in that instant that it responds in dreams, in perceptions, in peace. It reorganizes, it cleans, it heals what remained hidden so long. The soul does not need complex formulas. It needs space, listening, truth. And when you sleep in peace, it blossoms. When you sleep with faith, even without knowing exactly to what, your soul responds. And when you sleep with gratitude, even for what you don't understand yet, the life begins to move differently because now you're no longer fleeing through sleep, you are returning. And in this return, no matter how much time has passed, the soul always knows the way home.
The next morning, something in you is different, not because the world changed, but because your way of perceiving changed. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but suddenly you realize that your first thought in the morning was not fear, that coffee tastes quieter, that traffic no longer hurts, that a difficult memory appeared but did not pull you along with it. That is when the unconscious responds, through atmosphere, tone, through how you treat yourself, and starts allowing the world to treat you differently too. Jung said, when the unconscious is welcomed by consciousness, life ceases to be a burdensome drag and becomes a journey understood. And you begin to notice that. In small things, you choose your words better. You blame yourself less. You forgive more easily. Decisions that once caused anxiety now feel lighter. You breathe before reacting, listen before judging, wait before giving up, because something aligned within you. And that did not happen because of a video or a book or a miraculous formula. It happened because for 3 consecutive nights, you talked to your soul, to yourself, to the eternal part in you. 7 words. A reconnection. Jung said that suffering turns into healing when looked at with love, and love begins at the moment you decide to stop abandoning yourself. These words are not magic, they are reminders. You deserve rest. You're entitled to peace. You deserve to listen to yourself. And when you sleep with that intention, the world wakes differently. Not because it changed, but because you are no longer the same. You become more whole, and the world responds in kind, becoming more habitable. Challenges continue arriving. Situations repeat, but now there is a center in you, a listening, a root. And that center was born there, between the silence of the room, the last breath of the night, and the 7 words you had courage to say. Jung said that what is repeated with intention becomes a seed in the unconscious, that these seeds gradually take root, and it's these roots that sustain your life even amid storms. That's why these words don't need to be said only for 3 nights. You can continue making them your ritual, your pact with silence. A daily moment when the world turns off and you finally listen to yourself. There is no ideal form, no exact time, no obligation. There is only a moment, one dark room, one tired body, one soul ready to be held. And in that gesture, you remember that you need not carry everything, nor understand everything, nor resolve everything. Before sleeping, you only need to accept, trust, surrender, thank, and wish yourself good night. Because when you do that truly, not as mechanical phrase, but as intimate blessing, you are telling the universe, today I respect myself. Today I hold myself. Today I give myself peace. And the universe,
which hears everything that springs from the soul, responds not with applause, but with synchronicities, with clearer paths, with right meetings, with a serenity that once seemed unreachable. Jung knew that symbolic repetition heals, because each time you repeat a gesture with truth, you reinforce a new root within yourself. Over time, what once felt like just a ritual becomes part of who you are. You become calmer, more aware, more whole, not because you learn to control everything, but because you learn to trust and to converse with something greater in silence. The 7 words are the beginning. Practice is the path. Change is inevitable. Every soul that is listened to flourishes. Every night in which you hold yourself is an entire midnight in which the unconscious works for you. Maybe no one notices. Maybe no one knows that you began repeating 7 words before bed. Maybe it seems like a secret only you carry, but you'll know. You will feel it in your body, in your breathing, in how you respond to the world. You will notice that something changed, that you no longer abandon yourself so easily, that you listen more, that you expect less. Pain still exists, but now it is embraced, not denied. Pain may even remain present, but now it is held, no longer ignored or suppressed. Carl Jung said that true awakening does not arrive with fanfare or thunder. It happens so quietly, almost imperceptibly. It comes on any given night when you realize that peace once again fits within you. And it happened this way, with 7 words, with 3 nights, with a gesture that seemed too small to change anything, but it changed. Because it is not the gesture's size that transforms, it is the truth with which it is made. If this touched something in you, if these words opened a crack where before there was weight, guilt, or silence, then share them, not as advice, but as a seed. Someone close to you may have been sleeping at war with themselves for a long time, and like you, might only need a reminder, an invitation, a chance to return to themselves. You can be that breath, that beginning, that point of return, because sometimes a single phrase spoken with love changes the tone of an entire night, and a well-attended night's sleep has the power to change the journey of a whole life. Accept, trust, surrender, thank. Tonight you returned home.